Bibles, turn to Galatians 6 and 14. And that should be on the screen shortly. From the King James it says, "But God forbid that I should glory, save in the cross of Lord Jesus Christ, by whom the world is crucified unto me, and I unto the world." I went to South Texas for Christmas, and while I was there, I got to enjoy the company of my extended family. It's nice to do that every so often. Those of you who know me know I like to spin the yarn from time to time. Spinning the yarn is an old sailor's term for I like to talk and trade stories. So that's what I like to do sometimes. Some of my favorite stories are about my paternal grandfather, Oscar Sr. We called him Poppy. My paternal grandparents went by Mommy and Poppy regardless if you were related to them or not. That's what you called them. Poppy passed away while I was on deployment in 2010. He was a self-made millionaire and the most disciplined person to ever walk the earth. He saved 15% of his income, no matter what, all the time. My dad told me a story. You be seated, I'm sorry. I'm just going to keep rambling on while you stand. But my dad told me a story when he was younger. They ran out of milk and they ran out of money. And so they told my grandfather about it. And instead of pulling any of that money from his savings, he went out and worked again. He found some other jobs to do that day, and then went to the bank and put 15% of that in the bank before he finally stopped by the store on his way home. My dad and his brothers, they all used to drive trucks for my grandfather. And one hot summer day during grain season, Poppy stopped by the field to check on my dad and see how many loads he had hauled. When you haul grain, you have to wait in the field by your truck until the harvesters fill the trailer. It takes several hours. And Poppy always kept a pen and a notebook in his front shirt pocket. So he stopped by and see if my dad needed anything, and also, of course, to get his numbers. My dad told him that he was hungry and thirsty, but he couldn't leave the field until the trailer was loaded. So my grandfather said he would stop by the town and see if he could bring him anything. So regardless, what happened was he ended up bringing him a burger from Whataburger and a pitcher of iced tea from my grandmother every day that week. And if you don't know what Whataburger is, you're missing out. So Poppy paid all his sons in cash every Friday, and he would line them up from youngest to oldest. My dad is the oldest, so he got paid last. And the way my grandfather ran his business with his notebook, he was very thorough. He usually had an equal amount of loads for each son and therefore an equal amount of pay. So when it came to Friday, my dad is waiting to get paid. And my dad watched as my grandfather placed an equal amount of cash into each of his brothers' hands. When my grandfather got to my dad, he counted out $25 less though. My dad was upset, but Poppy pulled out his notebook and showed him his ledger. And sure enough, there was a notation for every burger and every pitcher of tea. And my grandfather had even charged my dad a delivery fee. He was extremely thorough in all his business dealings, even with his sons. So I laugh at those stories because they're funny, but they also reveal a very deep-seated discipline on the part of my grandfather and the so-called secret to success. Work hard, save diligently, write things down, show up on time, and do what you said you were going to do. That was my grandpa. So I'm not doing too badly when I compare myself to my cousins or to my peers, but when I compare myself to my grandpa, I am woefully inadequate. Let me set the record straight. I'm not a millionaire, and I'm not on my way to being one. The same is true when we compare ourselves to other Christians. You may be a better Christian than so-and-so or even me, but how do you compare to Christ? In the shadow of the cross, I am nothing. I've mentioned this before. I turned 33 this year. And when you turn 33 years old, you start to think, this was the same age that Jesus died. What have I done with my life compared to what he did with his? If you want to be successful in business, then you should be like my grandfather. If you want to be a better Christian, then you should be more like Christ, or at least be like someone who is Christ-like. My mom's a good example of that. She wakes up at 5 o'clock every morning to pray and study the Bible. I still remember the time she was begging God to have mercy on my rebellious teenage soul at 5:30 in the morning. Her room was right next to mine, and she was praying for my soul. Hopefully it worked. And besides Pastor, she's the first person I'm going to call if I start to see weird things going on, if there's any rapture-like happenings. If she answers the phone, I know that I'm safe. I'm still good to go. If it takes her a few rings, I might get nervous. So that takes me back to Galatians 6 and 14 and the song It Expired. Isaac Watts wrote, "When I survey the wondrous cross" in 1707. And I'm not a singer, so I'm just going to say it to you, and sometimes it helps us understand the lyrics a little better. "When I survey the wondrous cross on which the Prince of Glory died, my richest gain I count but loss, and pour contempt on all my pride. Forbid it, Lord, that I should boast, save in the death of Christ my God. All the vain things that charm me most, I sacrifice them to his blood. See, from his head, his hands, his feet, sorrow and love flow mingled down. Did e'er such love and sorrow meet, or thorns compose so great a crown? Were the whole realm of nature mine, that were a present far too small, love so amazing, so divine, demands my soul, my life, my all.